Hi there, it's Kate. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do the art movement tag. I was tagged by Charlotte at Tired Mama Tries to Read, and this is an original tag by Between Lines and Life, and I will link those videos down below. So this is a tag in which you there's prompts that are related to art movements, and then you correlate a book that you read to those. Yeah, so my kind of disclaimer is that I was into history, but not art history. So art is not something that I'm immensely familiar with. So let's just get into this and we'll see how this goes. So the first question is Baroque. Name an extravagant book character or a character that lives an extravagant life. And I think I went a slightly different direction with this one. Sorry, my laptop with the questions are right here, and then my book stash is here, so hopefully I will not be looking down too much. We'll see. Also, my husband is outside, and it sounds like he's chopping wood or something, so sorry if that gets loud. We'll have to make do. Anyways, Baroque, extravagant character, extravagant life. I choose SHANTARAM. So this is a book about an escaped convict from Australia who flees to India and leads a crazy life. And I think what's most crazy about this is that it's based on the true story of the author. So he lives in a slum for a while. He becomes a slum doctor. He becomes involved with the Indian mafia mob, like with drug running and some other various illicit trade. I guess not so much with the drug running, actually, now that I think about it. I've read this quite a while ago. Other sorts of illicit trade. There are drugs in here and drug use. There is a brothel that figures prominently. The mob boss is like basically a theologian, and he has all these really deep theological things to say about life and God, and it's just crazy. Everything that happens is just crazy, but also really good. And this is a book that I want to reread, and I think now that I'm kind of in this rereading kick, this is actually kind of high on my list to reread because it's been a while and I remember really liking it. I read this on audiobook, so I have not read it, the physical copy. My husband read it in the physical book, so I think I want to reread this one. SHANTARAM by Gregory David Roberts. This is a pretty good book. It's also really gigantic. The next prompt is Impressionism. Name a book that left a long-lasting impression on you. I picked two kinds of books here. The first is some books that I read in graduate school. It's a trilogy of historical monographs, so I don't even know what you would call that. But the author is Steve Stern, and it's about Chile and how Chilean people kind of came to terms, experienced and came to terms and then remember and heal from the atrocities of Pinochet's regime. So it's just really, to me, when I think about atrocity and government repression, I think of Chile. I think of disappearing people and mothers in the plaza who are pleading to learn about where their children went because they've disappeared. I think of, these are the types of things that I think about when I think of government atrocity. But then I think it's also important to understand that there is a way to come back from that. So even if that happens, being really purposeful about the way institutional memory and cultural memory is created and maintained is very important and can help an entire country perhaps heal or perhaps make it worse. So that's why I really enjoy these books and why they've made an impression and why I continually think of them, particularly in today's news cycle. As far as fiction goes, in a very different view, this is Midwinter by Fiona Melrose, and I read this last January, so nearly a year ago. In fact, I probably started it close to a year ago. And at the time, I thought I was kind of lukewarm about it. It is a very atmospheric, character-driven novel about a father and a son who live in Suffolk. Sorry, those of you who live in that area. They're farmers, and it is an era in which farming is very hard. This is the modern era. They used to live with their wife and mother in Zambia, and then something happened and they came back, and you get some flashbacks from both perspectives as to what happened at that time. And then you also get current perspectives as to what is happening. But I think more so than the plot, what has stuck with me is just the atmosphere and the feelings that I had when I was reading it about the setting and the land. And I find myself at least once a month thinking about those things in this book and thinking what a retreat it was. Even though the subject matter wasn't happy or cheerful in the book, the being in this setting was still a retreat, and because it was so all-enveloping. And so that is something that has really, really stuck with me. So that is Midwinter by Fiona Melrose. Next is Expressionism. Name a book that has a very personal, specific, and possibly unique outlook on the world. I don't have a copy of this book, but for me, this was The Last Neanderthal by Claire Cameron. And this is told in two perspectives. One is a modern-day archaeologist who is pregnant and is, I almost said archaeologizing, I'm pretty sure that's not a word, who is excavating the dig site where the Neanderthal woman and the human were found together, Homo sapien, I guess, whatever. I'm not 100% sure on the science there, but where they were found together. And so we get her perspective, which I didn't care for as much, but then we also get the perspective of the Neanderthal woman, like as she was living and then dying. And that was amazing. It was unlike any other book that I'd read, and the way that Cameron, the author, wove the science into the story was really well done and really made me think and learn something, and I loved that book. I did not love as much the sections of the book that were with the modern day sections, but that was totally because it hit way too close to home with a pregnant academic who was having to choose between her baby and her job. That hit too close to home for me, so I think that probably someone else would have enjoyed that a lot more. So that was The Last Neanderthal by Claire Cameron. Next prompt is Surrealism, a book that puts a spin on reality, or a sci-fi book. Another library book that I read earlier this year was The Philosopher's Flight by Tom Miller. And this was a book that in certain ways inverted patriarchy and gave us a glimpse of what matriarchy could look like in this country, where women had more power. So in this world, some women had the ability to fly, and men did not, except for our main character. He's like the one man ever who had the ability to fly. And they're engaged in the U.S. in this world is engaged in a war. This is actually, is it World War I? I think this is World War I. And so it's like an alternate reality. And so the women who are at this school for flying, and then our one male main character, are going to be military generals and heroes. And it was just really interesting. They pronouns within this school, pronouns became gendered, default to a female gendered pronoun instead of a male gendered pronoun. And that was just a really interesting way of looking at it, because it's something that you rarely, it's hard to think of. If it's something that, like myself, I don't need to think of very often, because my gender identity is not contested. So it was a really interesting way of looking at things, especially that also in this world, there were also men who were outside of the school and felt very threatened by this female power. And so there was this politics that was happening outside, and it was really interesting. And I was very surprised through the whole book that it was written by a man. And so I'm excited for the next book in this series to come out. So that was The Philosopher's Flight by Tom Miller. Next is Pointillism, a book where different narratives make the bigger picture. That I picked the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. I finished this a few months ago, and this is about a Baptist missionary family in the 50s or 60s that, maybe even the 60s or 70s. Anyways, they go to Africa. The father is a Baptist preacher, and we get the perspective of the mother and then each of the 5 daughters as they are in the country, and then as they leave, and then as they continue to move through their lives. And we really get a full picture of neocolonialism and what that looks like especially in its religious sense. I loved it. And each of the perspectives absolutely added something different because they each showed a different kind of facet of this neocolonialism. So, great book. Pop Art, a book that criticizes consumerism in some way or looks critically at current times. First, I picked 2 for this one as well. This is Tell Me How It Ends, an essay in 40 questions by Valeria Luiselli. This is a book about the immigration crisis. Luiselli is an interpreter for children in immigration court, and she has to help them answer these 40 questions about their lives. And so she goes through the 40 questions and how the children often answer, but also explains a lot about the immigration crisis itself and how it came to pass. I highly recommend this if you are at all unclear about why or what is happening. This is a great place to start. I mean, it's a super short, easy to read book, but it packs so much information, and it is not, I mean, it's necessarily political because the topic is political, but because it was written about during the Obama administration, it doesn't include any of the current political issues. So that almost made it easier to read just for the background because it didn't go quite as far as what's happening currently, if that makes any sense. It gave you how things, like why are immigrants leaving Central America? What conditions caused them to leave? And then why this weird asylum status, etc., etc., etc. I recommend this one. And then the other is, this is Banana Cultures by John Soluri. This is my advisor in graduate school. And this is about, so this is more like the consumer culture side of this prompt. This is about the banana, all about the banana, where it came from, how it came to be, how it went from something that was very strange to Americans to basically a staple. It's from like the science and genetic engineering to the marketing, the Chiquita Banana campaign, etc. So it's super, super interesting. And you wouldn't believe that you could write a whole book about a banana, but you absolutely can. Next is Dadaism, a weird book, or a book with a spin on the novel format. This is one of my favorite books of the year. This is Hernan Diaz, In the Distance. And this is just a weird book. And it's weird in the sense that it's like a magical realism type of weird, in that the main character starts out as a boy and becomes a man who just never stops growing. He has, strength that accompanies a very large man. He gets into really weird situations, but it's all written so beautifully, and you learn so much about not only your main character, but like the nature writing in this book is phenomenal. You learn so much about being outside in different parts of the United States that I really, really love this book. The final prompt is Performance Art, a book that would make a great movie or your favorite play. And I had a copy of this, but my children absconded with it this morning. So it's a book or a play that I haven't read yet, but plan to very soon, which is A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. That's because I just finished the biography Looking for Lorraine, but And so now I can't wait to read the play and then hopefully watch a film adaptation as well. But I haven't gotten to that yet, and just pretend like I have the book, because I do own it, but don't know where it is. And then there are 2 bonus questions. The first is a fiction book that discusses art, and I would have to use The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay, which I just finished 2 weeks ago, last week, and loved. And the art world is the backdrop for all of everything that takes place. There's 3 different timelines in the book. In the first timeline, Nora is an artist. In the second timeline, Yale is a fundraiser for an art museum. And then in the third timeline, Fiona is staying with a photographer, a friend of hers, who was exhibiting his artwork. So that's a fantastic book, and I loved it. And then the last bonus question is your favorite artist or painting. And this one I struggled with because I don't know that I have one. In our house, we kind of have a rule that we only put art on our walls that's by people that we know, or artists that we that are like local to us. So we have a painting, and I'll see if I can find a website that is for the artist. But this painting is of a barn that is in the foreground, and then in the background is one of the mountains that's nearby. We live at the foot or at the base of the Cascade Range, so there's a lot of mountains. And the picture, we got it before we moved into this house, but it kind of just encapsulated why we love this area and why it's special to us, because it's beautiful and it's calm and it's quiet, and that's why we love that painting. And like I said, I don't even know the artist's name off the top of my head, but I'll try to link it down below. That is it. I don't think I have anybody to tag right now, because I think Charlotte already tagged everybody that I would have tagged. But if you haven't done it, it's a super fun tag to do, so I really, really encourage it. If you've read any of these books or have any comments about them, let me know down below. I would love to chat about them. And in the meantime, have a great day. I'll talk to you later.